In life, we all encounter people with different characters. Some inspire us, give us strength, and push us toward growth. But there are also those whose mindset, worldview, and way of life we can sense within the very first minutes of conversation. You don't need to spend years around someone to truly know them. Often, just a few of their sentences, the decisions they make, and the way they treat others reveal everything. The Stoic philosophers used to say, a person's worth is not in what they say, but in what they show. Words can lie, but behavior never hides the truth. Foolish people often seem harmless. They might come across as nothing more than someone who makes silly mistakes or thoughtless decisions, but in reality their narrow thinking, inability to control emotions, selfish approach, and irrational actions can harm not only themselves, but also those around them. That's why it's important to recognize such people early, to make wiser choices, build friendships with the right people, and protect yourself from negative influences. But how can we identify them? That's exactly what this video will cover. Today, through the lens of Stoic philosophy, I'll show you 6 clear signs of a foolish person. I'll explain each one in detail, so that when you encounter such personalities in your life, you'll recognize them instantly and keep the right distance. And if you subscribe to my channel and like this video, I'll truly appreciate it, and because that way, even more people can benefit from this knowledge. One of the biggest and most dangerous traits of a foolish person is that they never see themselves as wrong. For them, saying "I made a mistake" feels like denying their very existence. Instead of admitting fault, even when it's obvious, they make excuses, twist the situation, or try to justify themselves. This is the first clear sign of a fool. They always think they are right. In their eyes, a discussion is not a healthy dialogue aimed at finding the truth. To them, it's simply a battle to prove they're correct. No matter how strong the evidence presented by the other person, they won't listen. They're only waiting for a chance to declare their arguments as the winner. The Stoic philosophers said, "The wise man speaks not to prove he is right, but to discover what is true." This is a profound lesson. A wise person's goal is not to feed their ego, but to uncover reality. A fool, however, is not concerned with truth, only with defending their position, even if that position is completely wrong. At the root of this behavior usually lie ego and fear. Ego, because they hate to appear mistaken. Fear, because they believe admitting fault makes them look weak. Yet in truth, acknowledging a mistake is a sign of strength. It shows openness to learning and growth. When you talk with this type of person, you often sense that they seem to be listening, but in reality they're only preparing their response. For them, listening is not about understanding, it's about waiting to react. That's why conversations with such people often feel exhausting. You seek to get closer to the truth, while they fight only to appear victorious. What's most interesting is that while such people often believe they've won a discussion, in reality, they've only missed an opportunity to grow. According to Stoic philosophy, true victory is not about defeating others, but about conquering your own ego and overcoming your own mistakes. If someone sees admitting their fault as a weakness, know that this is a clear sign of deep ignorance. Over time, this trait damages relationships, breaks friendships, and creates conflicts in the workplace. Working with such people is like talking to a wall. Your voice bounces back, but no real echo ever comes. The wise approach is not to try to win every argument, but to stay open-minded in the search for truth. Remember, when a person admits their mistake, they are not diminishing themselves, they are elevating themselves. Another obvious sign of a foolish person is their lack of emotional control. These people overreact to everything. A single word, even a joke, can trigger an explosion of anger. This is the second sign. To them, every event feels like a personal attack. It's as if the whole world is against them and everyone is working against their interests. Stoic philosophy, on the other hand, considered emotional stability one of life's most essential skills. Marcus Aurelius said, "You are not disturbed by events, but by the views you take of them." In other words, it's not what happens that unsettles us, but the meaning we assign to it. People who cannot manage their emotions often make rash decisions. When angry, they cannot speak wisely. When anxious, they cannot decide correctly. As a result, they harm both themselves and those around them. That's why their lives are often filled with regret. "I wish I hadn't said that." Or, "I wish I hadn't reacted that way." There's a repeating pattern in their behavior. Event, sudden emotional outburst, regret, but no lesson learned. Because to them, these reactions feel normal. They defend themselves by saying, "That's just my character." But in truth, this isn't character, it's simply weak self-control. A wise person knows that managing emotions does not mean suppressing them. It doesn't mean denying what you feel, but rather guiding your emotions in the right direction. The Stoics taught that the one who can master their emotions is the one who can master their life. Dealing with people who lack emotional control is difficult. Talking to them often feels like walking on eggshells. You never know when, or after which word they'll explode. This poisons relationships and destroys mutual trust. If you have such people in your life, the Stoic approach is to maintain emotional distance, because even if you remain calm, they can unleash their storms upon you at any moment. And that storm is not just a passing anger. It creates lasting stress and tension. Another clear sign of a foolish person is their lack of consistency in life. One day they defend a certain idea, the next day they claim the exact opposite. It's as if their lives are not guided by firm principles, but by random moods and passing emotions. This is the third sign. In conversations, you'll often notice this. Yesterday, they may have insisted, "This task must absolutely be done." Yet today, with no explanation, they'll say, "It's not important." This isn't just a simple change of mind. It reveals an instability in their thinking and values. These people are often led by their emotions, forgetting logic altogether. For instance, they may make a sudden decision in the heat of the moment, only to realize later, once the emotions fade, that it wasn't the right choice at all. But by then, unfortunately, the consequences of that decision have already begun to unfold. What makes this even more dangerous is that unstable decisions affect not only their own lives, but also the lives of those around them. If you work with such a person, you can never be sure they'll keep the promise they made today when tomorrow comes. And if such a person is a family member, their sudden changes of plan will inevitably force you to change yours as well. A wise person, on the other hand, always makes decisions aligned with their principles and values. This doesn't mean they never change their mind. On the contrary, when new information arises, they reevaluate their choices. But they do so based on sound reasoning, not fleeting emotions. Being close to such inconsistent people means living in constant unpredictability. You can't forecast what they will do tomorrow, what stance they will take, or what decision they will make. This disrupts your own rhythm of life and disturbs your inner balance. The fourth sign of a foolish person is their constant criticism of others. For them, no one is ever good enough. Your success is not something to celebrate, but an opportunity to search for flaws. Such people find it easier to focus on someone else's life than on their own. Diminishing the achievements of others is the cheapest way to hide their own failures. They magnify the smallest mistakes in others, yet completely ignore their own. The Stoics described such people as those who try to conceal their inner darkness by extinguishing someone else's light. Their criticism is often born out of envy, ego, and discontent. They are quick to judge others, how someone dresses, what someone does, or what someone says. These become the daily topics of their conversations. Interestingly, they talk endlessly, yet rarely take any real steps to make meaningful changes in their own lives. Interacting with such people can be exhausting. You hesitate to share your achievements or your joy, knowing they will either belittle them or pierce you with a disguised remark that ruins your mood. At the root of this habit usually lies inner dissatisfaction. A person who is unhappy with their own life cannot digest the happiness of others. That's why they seize every chance to criticize, trying to elevate themselves while putting others down. From a Stoic perspective, there's no need to argue with people who constantly criticize others. Don't take their words personally. Most of the time, their words aren't truly about you. They're echoes of their own unresolved problems. Another clear trait of a foolish person is their lack of real facts, accurate information, or deep knowledge in life. Instead, their main source of information is gossip, unverified news circulating on social media, and rumors about other people. This is the fifth sign. For them, the most enjoyable gatherings are the ones where they can sip on the tea of other people's lives, who did what, who spoke to whom, and who made what mistake. The danger here is that such conversations rarely bring any benefit, but they often damage reputations, relationships, and trust. Stoic philosophy considered this habit a kind of spiritual illness. Marcus Aurelius said, "Your time is limited, so don't waste it living someone else's life." A wise person spends their time gaining knowledge, improving themselves, and doing meaningful work. A foolish person wastes it on others' lives, leaving their own life empty. When you interact with such people, you notice that most of what they say isn't based on facts, but on hearsay. They often begin their sentences with, "I heard that," but you'll rarely hear them say, "I researched," or "There's evidence that." The culture of gossip, on one hand, increases negative feelings toward others, because everyone has flaws, and when these are constantly pointed out, it becomes harder to think positively about people. On the other hand, gossipers put themselves at risk too, because one day, others will inevitably speak about them in the same way. The wise approach is to evaluate the value and impact of information. If a piece of information brings no benefit, harms others, or does nothing to help us grow, then speaking it, nor even listening to it, is nothing but wasted time and moral pollution. The sixth sign is their intolerance to criticism. One of the most typical traits of a foolish person is their inability to handle criticism. To them, any remark, any suggestion for correction, even if delivered in the gentlest way, is instantly taken as a personal attack. For such people, the phrase, "you made a mistake," feels identical to, "you are worthless." A wise person, on the other hand, sees criticism as a mirror. The mirror shows you the truth whether you like it or not. But a foolish person tries to shatter that mirror, because facing the truth disturbs their fragile ego. These types of people usually show three common reactions to criticism. 1. Denial. They outright reject even obvious facts by saying, "No, I didn't do that." 2. Defensiveness. They immediately jump to justify themselves and try to shift the focus elsewhere. 3. Attack. They counterattack, trying to expose the flaws of the one who criticized them. Stoic philosophy regarded criticism as one of the most valuable tools for learning and self-improvement. Epictetus said, "Do not regard the person who corrects you as an enemy. See him as a teacher," for the right kind of criticism shows us mistakes we failed to notice and gives us the opportunity to grow. Those who are intolerant of criticism, however, live as if locked in a closed room. They only hear their own voices and ignore the perspectives of others. This keeps them repeating the same mistakes over and over again. Working with such people is especially difficult. Even when you give constructive feedback, they become offended or aggressive. Over time, those around them stop offering any feedback at all. As a result, they remain blind to their flaws and gradually decline. The wise approach is to never take criticism as a personal attack. Instead, extract what is useful and apply it, and quietly set aside what is not. If a person is closed to criticism, they are also closed to change. And a person closed to change inevitably falls behind in life. So, if you notice several of these 6 signs in someone's character, be cautious. Their narrow mindset, unstable decisions, inability to control emotions, and meaningless habits can drain your energy, damage your clarity of thought, and even disrupt your rhythm of life. Such people often belittle the success of others to hide their own emptiness. Being around them for too long can lead to stress, unease, and even self-doubt. One of the greatest lessons of Stoic philosophy is this: the people you spend time with shape who you become. The energy, mindset, and behavior of those around you directly influence your state of mind. That is why one of the most important choices in life is to carefully choose your circle. Share your time, energy, and attention only with those who contribute to your growth, your inner strength, and your happiness. Remember, life is short, and every day is an opportunity. Every time you waste your energy on narrow-minded, pointless, and draining people, you lose a part of yourself. But if you invest that same energy in self-improvement, in gaining knowledge, and in deepening your inner life, each step will make you stronger, wiser, and calmer. So protect yourself. Do not spend your precious time with those who constantly search for flaws in others. Instead of confronting their own, do not get caught up in their meaningless criticism and gossip. Do not allow their instability, discontent, and intolerance of criticism to pull you down. Instead, surround yourself with people who lift you up, enrich your thinking, and add value to your soul and life. Thank you for watching this far. If you found this video valuable, please don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like the video, and share it with your friends. Your single share can help spread Stoic wisdom to more people and positively impact their lives as well. Every click, every subscription, and every share has the power to create change, not only in your life but also in the lives of others. Never forget, by choosing the people you spend your time with, you are also choosing the quality of your life. The people around you shape you, but your choices determine how much influence they will have. So be wise, protect your energy, and fill your life with those who truly add value. Every minute is an investment. Don't waste it on the meaningless, but spend it on your growth and development. See you in the next video.